Against all odds, a startup's journey through the pandemic. Chapter 1. The World Stops. It was March 2020, and the world felt like it was ending. The news was full of scary stories about a virus that was spreading everywhere. Countries were closing their borders. People were told to stay home. Stores were shutting down. Nobody knew what would happen next. That's when we got the call that changed everything. We had been accepted into Y Combinator, one of the most famous startup programs in the world. Companies like Airbnb, Dropbox, and Reddit had all started there. It was supposed to be the best thing that could happen to a new company like ours. But the timing couldn't have been worse. My co-founder Sarah and I had been working on our idea for months. We wanted to build a platform that would help small businesses find new customers. We thought it was the perfect time to start a company. The economy was doing well, businesses were growing, and everyone seemed to be spending money. Then COVID-19 hit, and everything changed overnight. When we arrived in San Francisco for the YC program, the city felt like a ghost town. The famous startup offices were empty. Coffee shops were closed. Even the YC building was mostly empty, with everyone working from home. We were part of what people called the COVID batch, the group of startups that were unlucky enough to start their journey right when the world was falling apart. While other YC batches got to network at fancy events and pitch to rooms full of investors, we were stuck on video calls, trying to figure out how to build a company when nobody knew what tomorrow would bring. The first week was the hardest. We watched the news every day, seeing more and more businesses close down. The stock market was crashing. People were losing their jobs. And here we were, trying to convince people to invest in our company that was supposed to help businesses grow. It felt impossible. But we had come too far to give up. We had quit our jobs, moved across the country, and put all our money into this dream. We had to make it work, even if the world was ending around us. Chapter 2. Learning the Hard Way. The Y Combinator program was supposed to last 3 months. During that time, we were supposed to build our product, find customers, and get ready to pitch to investors. It sounds simple, but nothing about it was easy. Our idea was to create a website where small businesses could list their services and connect with people who needed them. Think of it like a mix between Yelp and Craigslist, but focused on helping local businesses grow. We spent weeks building our website. Sarah was the technical person, so she worked on the code, while I focused on finding customers. We worked from a tiny apartment in San Francisco, often staying up until 2 a.m. trying to get everything perfect. The first version of our website was terrible. It looked like it was made in 1995, and half the buttons didn't work. But we were so excited to show it to people that we didn't care. We thought customers would love it just because we had built it. We were wrong. Our first customer meeting was with a local restaurant owner named Mike. He was a friendly guy who had been running his restaurant for 20 years. We showed him our website and explained how it would help him find new customers. Mike listened patiently, then asked us a simple question. Why would I use this instead of just posting on Facebook? We didn't have a good answer. That's when we realized we had a big problem. We had built something that we thought was cool, but we hadn't really thought about whether people actually needed it. We were so focused on the technology that we forgot about the customer. Over the next few weeks, we talked to dozens of business owners. We heard the same thing over and over again. This is nice, but I already have ways to find customers. Or I don't have time to learn a new system. Or how do I know this will actually work? By the end of our first month in YC, we had signed up exactly 0 paying customers. The YC partners were patient with us, but we could tell they were worried. During our weekly check-ins, they would ask us tough questions. How many customers do you have? What's your revenue? What's your plan for growth? We didn't have good answers to any of these questions. Chapter 3. The pandemic hits hard. Just when we thought things couldn't get worse, they did. The pandemic went from being a scary news story to something that affected everyone's daily life. California announced a lockdown, which meant all non-essential businesses had to close. Our target customers, small businesses, were suddenly fighting for their lives. Restaurants could only do takeout. Retail stores were completely closed. Service businesses like hair salons and gyms were shut down indefinitely. The businesses that were still open had no money to spend on new marketing tools. They were focused on one thing: survival. We quickly realized that our original idea was dead. Who was going to pay for a tool to find new customers when they couldn't even keep their existing customers safe? But we were stuck. We had already spent months building our platform. We had investors expecting us to succeed. And we had no other ideas. Sarah and I spent long nights talking about what to do. Should we try to change our idea? Should we just give up and go back to our old jobs? Should we try to wait out the pandemic and hope things would get better? The YC partners told us what every entrepreneur hears: pivot or die. This means you either change your business idea or your company will fail. But pivoting is scary. It means admitting that your original idea was wrong. It means starting over. It means all the work you've done so far might be wasted. We weren't ready to give up, but we also weren't sure what else to do. Meanwhile, we were running out of money. We had saved up enough to last us through the YC program, but we hadn't planned for a pandemic. Our rent was expensive, our savings were disappearing, and we weren't making any money from our business. By the end of March 2020, we had about 6 months of money left. That might sound like a lot, but when you're running a startup, 6 months can disappear very quickly. Chapter 4: Demo Day Disaster. Every YC batch ends with something called Demo Day. This is when all the startups present their companies to hundreds of investors. It's supposed to be the big moment when you raise money and launch your company to success. Our demo day was in June 2020, and it was unlike any demo day in YC history. Instead of a big event with investors flying in from around the world, it was all online. We had to pitch our company over video calls to investors who were stuck at home, probably distracted by their kids or their own problems. We had spent weeks preparing for Demo Day. We practiced our pitch hundreds of times. We made beautiful slides. We had all our numbers ready. But deep down, we knew we were in trouble. We still didn't have any paying customers. Our original idea clearly wasn't working, and we were running out of money fast. The day of our presentation, Sarah and I sat in our tiny apartment, dressed in our best clothes from the waist up. We were wearing sweatpants below, but the camera couldn't see that. We had practiced so much that we could give our pitch in our sleep. But when it came time to present, everything went wrong. First, our internet connection was spotty, so our video kept freezing. Then, one of our slides was messed up and showed the wrong numbers. Finally, when we got to the Q&A part, the investors asked us the questions we had been dreading. How many customers do you have? And what's your monthly revenue? We had to admit that we had 0 paying customers and 0 revenue. The investors were polite, but we could tell they weren't interested. After our presentation, we got a few follow-up emails, but nothing serious. Most investors didn't even respond. Demo Day was supposed to be our big break. Instead, it felt like the end of our company. Chapter 5: The Long, Dark Period. The months after Demo Day were the hardest of our lives. We had no customers, no revenue, and no clear path forward. Our savings were running out, and we were starting to panic. Sarah and I had very different ways of dealing with stress. She would stay up all night coding, trying to fix problems that didn't really matter. I would spend hours researching other companies, looking for ideas we could copy or improve. We both felt like failures. The worst part was watching other startups succeed while we struggled. Every day, we would see news about companies that had raised millions of dollars or launched successful products. We would read about entrepreneurs who had figured out how to thrive during the pandemic. Meanwhile, we were eating ramen noodles and wondering if we should give up. We started having serious conversations about quitting. Sarah had been offered her old job back at a tech company. I had been contacted by a former boss who wanted to hire me. The safe thing to do would have been to take those jobs and admit that we had failed. But something kept us going. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was fear of admitting defeat. Maybe it was the belief that we were close to figuring something out. We decided to give ourselves one more chance. We would try to pivot our business one more time. If it didn't work, we would quit and go back to regular jobs. But first, we had to figure out what our new business would be. Chapter 6: Talking to Customers. Finally, instead of sitting in our apartment and guessing what people wanted, we decided to actually talk to potential customers. This sounds obvious, but we had been so focused on building our product that we had forgotten to really listen to what people needed. We made a list of every business owner we could think of. Friends, family, people we had met at coffee shops, anyone who might be willing to talk to us. Then we started calling them. The conversations were awkward at first. We would call someone and say, "Hi, we're building a startup and we want to ask you some questions about your business." Most people were polite but didn't really want to talk. But we kept trying. We called dozens of people every day. We asked them about their biggest problems, their biggest expenses, and what kept them up at night. After a few weeks, we started to notice patterns. Many business owners were struggling with the same few problems. First, they were having trouble managing their money. They didn't know how much they were spending or where their money was going. They were using spreadsheets and paper receipts, and it was a mess. Second, they were worried about their employees. They wanted to pay them well, but they didn't know if they could afford it. They were scared of having to lay people off. Third, they were confused about government programs. During the pandemic, there were lots of loans and grants available to help small businesses, but the applications were complicated and confusing. The more we talked to people, the more we realized that we had been solving the wrong problem. We had been focused on helping businesses find new customers, but most businesses didn't need more customers. They needed help managing the customers they already had. Chapter 7. The Big Pivot. After talking to hundreds of business owners, we finally understood what we needed to build. Instead of a platform to find new customers, we decided to build a tool to help small businesses manage their finances. This was a complete change from our original idea. Instead of marketing and sales, we would focus on accounting and bookkeeping. Instead of helping businesses grow, we would help them survive. Sarah was nervous about the pivot. She had spent months learning about marketing technology, and now we were asking her to learn about financial software. But she was also excited about the challenge. I was terrified. Accounting seemed boring and complicated. I didn't know anything about financial software, and I was worried that we were making another mistake. But we had talked to so many business owners who needed help with their finances that we knew this was a real problem. And unlike our original idea, this was a problem that people were willing to pay to solve. We spent 2 months building a simple version of our financial management tool. It wasn't fancy, but it solved the basic problems that business owners had told us about. It could track expenses, manage cash flow, and help with tax preparation. The first version was just a basic website with a few forms and reports. It looked like it was made by beginners because it was, but it actually worked. We were scared to show it to people because we thought they would laugh at us. But we needed to know if we were on the right track, so we called some of the business owners we had talked to before. The reaction was completely different from our first product. Instead of polite rejection, we got genuine interest. People asked us questions about how it worked, how much it would cost, and when they could start using it. One restaurant owner named Lisa said something that changed everything for us. "This is exactly what I've been looking for. I've been using 3 different tools to manage my money, and they don't work together. This could save me hours every week." That's when we knew we had found something real. Chapter 8. First Customers and Early Revenue. Getting our first paying customer was one of the best moments of our lives. It was October 2020, 7 months after we had started the YC program. Lisa, the restaurant owner, agreed to pay us $50 per month to use our financial management tool. $50 might not sound like much, but to us, it was everything. It was proof that we had built something people actually wanted. It was proof that we weren't complete failures. Over the next few weeks, we signed up 5 more customers. Each one was a small business owner who had been struggling with the same financial management problems. They were all willing to pay us between $30 and $100 per month, depending on how many features they needed. By the end of 2020, we had 12 paying customers and were making about $600 per month in revenue. It wasn't enough to live on, but it was a start. Sarah and I were still living in our tiny San Francisco apartment, still eating ramen noodles, and still worried about money. But for the first time in months, we felt like we were moving in the right direction. The customers we had were also our best source of new ideas. They would tell us about problems they were having, and we would build features to solve those problems. They would suggest improvements, and we would implement them. This was completely different from how we had built our first product. Instead of guessing what people wanted, we were building exactly what our customers asked for. Chapter 9. Staying Alive. The year 2021 was all about survival. We had found a product that people wanted, but we were still struggling to make enough money to keep going. We had to make some tough decisions. We couldn't afford to hire employees, so Sarah and I had to do everything ourselves. We wrote code, talked to customers, handled billing, and even did our own marketing. We also couldn't afford to spend money on fancy tools or services. We used free versions of everything we could find. We hosted our website on the cheapest server we could find. We did our own accounting using our own software. The worst part was that we couldn't pay ourselves. For the entire year, Sarah and I lived off our savings and credit cards. We ate cheap food, lived in a small apartment, and didn't buy anything we didn't absolutely need. But we were determined to make it work. Every month, we would set a goal for how many new customers we wanted to sign up. Sometimes we would meet our goal, sometimes we wouldn't. But we kept trying. By the end of 2021, we had 45 paying customers and were making about $2,800 per month in revenue. It still wasn't enough to pay ourselves, but it was enough to cover our basic business expenses. We also started to notice something interesting. Our customers were staying with us. Unlike a lot of software companies, we weren't losing customers every month. Once people started using our tool, they kept using it. This was important because it meant that every new customer we got would continue paying us month after month. Instead of constantly having to find new customers to replace the ones we lost, we could focus on growing. Chapter 10. The Big Change. By early 2022, we realized that we needed to make another big change. Not to our product this time, but to our strategy. We had been trying to serve all kinds of small businesses, but we discovered that some types of businesses were much better customers than others. Restaurants and retail stores loved our tool and used it every day. But service businesses like consultants and freelancers didn't need as many features and weren't willing to pay as much. We decided to focus completely on restaurants and retail stores. This meant that we could build features specifically for those businesses, and we could charge more money because we were solving more specific problems. This decision was scary because it meant turning away potential customers. But it also meant that we could be much better at serving the customers we did have. We rebuilt our entire product around the needs of restaurants and retail stores. We added features like inventory tracking, employee scheduling, and sales reporting. We raised our prices to reflect the additional value we were providing. Some of our existing customers weren't happy about the changes. A few of them canceled their subscriptions. But the customers who stayed were much happier with the new version of our product. More importantly, we started attracting bigger customers who were willing to pay more money. Instead of charging $50 per month, we were now charging $200 to $500 per month. By the end of 2022, we had 32 paying customers, fewer than before, but paying much more, and were making about $8,000 per month in revenue. For the first time since we started the company, we could afford to pay ourselves small salaries. Chapter 11. The Breakthrough. The beginning of 2023 was when everything changed. We had spent 3 years building our product and finding customers one by one. It was slow, difficult work, but it had taught us exactly what our customers needed. One of our customers, a restaurant chain with 5 locations, asked us if we could help them manage all their locations from one account. We built this feature for them, and it worked so well that they told other restaurant owners about us. That's when we discovered the power of word-of-mouth marketing. Instead of us having to find customers, customers started finding us. Restaurant owners would hear about our tool from other restaurant owners and would sign up without us having to do any sales work. This was a complete game changer. Instead of having to cold call business owners and convince them to try our product, we were getting inquiries from people who already wanted to use it. We started getting 2 or 3 new customers every week without doing any marketing. Each new customer was paying us $300 to $500 per month, which meant our revenue was growing quickly. By the middle of 2023, we were making over $20,000 per month in revenue. Sarah and I could finally pay ourselves decent salaries, and we started thinking about hiring our first employee. We also started getting attention from investors. People who had ignored us during our demo day were now interested in talking to us. We had proven that our business model worked, and we had a track record of growth. Chapter 12. Raising Money. In September 2023, we decided to try to raise money from investors. This was something we had been afraid to do for a long time because we remembered how badly our first demo day had gone. But now we had a real business. We had customers who loved our product, we were making significant revenue, and we were growing every month. We felt ready to take the next step. Raising money as a startup is weird and stressful. You have to convince people to give you money based on your potential, not just your current results. You have to create presentations and financial projections and answer hundreds of questions about your business. The first few investor meetings didn't go well. We were nervous, and we didn't do a good job explaining our business. Some investors said we were too small, others said they didn't understand our market. But we kept trying. We practiced our pitch, we improved our presentation, and we got better at answering questions. Then we met Sarah Chen, not my co-founder Sarah, but an investor with the same name. She was a partner at a venture capital firm that specialized in small business software. She had been a restaurant owner herself before becoming an investor, so she understood the problems we were solving. Sarah Chen loved our product and our story. She said that most startups try to grow too fast and burn out, but we had built something sustainable. She wanted to invest in our company. Over the next few weeks, we met with several other investors. Some of them were also interested in investing. We had to decide how much money to raise and which investors to work with. In November 2023, we closed our first real funding round. We raised $3 million from a group of investors led by Sarah Chen's firm. It was one of the best days of our lives. Chapter 13. Building a team. With money in the bank, we could finally start building a real company. The first thing we did was hire 2 employees, a developer to help Sarah with the technical work, and a customer success manager to help me take care of our customers. Hiring our first employees was exciting but also terrifying. We had never managed anyone before, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We were worried about making mistakes and wasting money. Our first hire was Jake, a software developer who had experience building financial software. He was excited about our mission and wanted to help small businesses succeed. He fit in perfectly with our team. Our second hire was Maria, who had worked in customer service at several other software companies. She was great at talking to customers and helping them solve problems. She also had ideas for how we could improve our product. Having a team completely changed how our company worked. Instead of Sarah and I having to do everything ourselves, we could focus on the things we were best at. Sarah could focus on building new features, I could focus on strategy and partnerships, Jake could help with the technical work, and Maria could make sure our customers were happy. We also started to feel like a real company. We had regular team meetings, we set goals and tracked our progress, and we celebrated our wins together. Chapter 14. Growing Success. With our new team and additional funding, we were able to grow much faster than before. We could afford to spend money on marketing, we could build new features more quickly, and we could provide better customer service. In 2024, we signed up over 200 new customers. Our monthly revenue grew from $20,000 to over $60,000. We were becoming a real business with real success. But the best part wasn't the money or the growth. It was the impact we were having on our customers' lives. We would get emails from restaurant owners telling us how our software had helped them save money, manage their staff better, and grow their businesses. One customer, a pizza shop owner named Tony, told us that our software had helped him avoid bankruptcy during a particularly tough period. He said that without our financial tracking tools, he wouldn't have realized how much money he was losing on certain menu items. Another customer, a boutique clothing store owner named Jennifer, said that our inventory management features had helped her reduce waste and increase profits. She was able to expand her store to a second location partly because of the money she saved using our tools. These stories reminded us why we had started the company in the first place. We weren't just building software, we were helping people achieve their dreams. Chapter 15. Looking back and moving forward. Next week, we're taking our whole team on a company trip to celebrate how far we've come. We're going to a nice resort in Hawaii, something that would have been impossible to imagine during those dark days in 2020 and 2021. Looking back on our journey, the thing that stands out most is how close we came to giving up. There were so many moments when quitting would have been the logical choice. We had no customers, no revenue, and no clear path forward. But we kept going. We kept talking to customers, kept building features, and kept trying new things. We learned from our mistakes and adapted when things didn't work. The most important lesson we learned was that success doesn't come from having a perfect plan. It comes from being willing to change your plan when you learn new information. Our company today is completely different from the company we started, and that's okay. We also learned that starting a company during a crisis can actually be an advantage. When times are tough, people are more willing to try new solutions. They're more focused on solving real problems and less focused on fancy features. The pandemic was terrible for many businesses, but it taught us to focus on what really matters, solving real problems for real customers. Today, our company is growing fast, our customers are happy, and our team is excited about the future. We're working on new features that will help even more small businesses succeed. We're planning to expand into new markets and serve new types of customers. But we'll never forget where we came from. We'll never forget those long nights eating ramen noodles and wondering if we were making a huge mistake. We'll never forget the feeling of getting our first paying customer or the relief of finally making enough money to pay ourselves. Most importantly, we'll never forget that success isn't guaranteed. Every day, we have to work hard to keep our customers happy and our business growing. We can't take anything for granted. Looking forward, we're excited about what's possible. We've proven that we can build a successful company, but we're just getting started. There are millions of small businesses that could benefit from better financial management tools, and we want to help as many of them as possible. We also want to be an example for other entrepreneurs who are struggling. If we can build a successful company starting during a global pandemic with no customers and no revenue, anyone can do it. It just takes persistence, willingness to learn, and the courage to keep going when things get tough. The journey from zero to success isn't easy, but it's possible. And for us, it was worth every difficult moment along the way. Epilogue: the real victory. As I write this story, I realize that our biggest victory wasn't raising $3 million or growing to $60,000 in monthly revenue. Our biggest victory was simply not giving up. So many companies started during the pandemic and failed. So many entrepreneurs got discouraged and quit. So many good ideas never became real businesses because the people behind them didn't persist through the difficult times. We're not special. We're not smarter than other entrepreneurs, and we didn't have any secret advantages. We just kept going when it would have been easier to quit. That's the real lesson of our story. Success isn't about being perfect or having all the answers. Success is about being willing to keep trying, keep learning, and keep adapting until you find something that works. The pandemic taught us that the world can change quickly and dramatically. Businesses that seemed strong can fail overnight, and ideas that seemed impossible can suddenly become necessary. But it also taught us that people are resilient. Small business owners found ways to adapt and survive. Entrepreneurs found new solutions to old problems. And customers were willing to try new tools when they really needed them. Our story isn't over. We're still building, still growing, and still learning. But we're no longer worried about survival. We're focused on success, and we're excited about what's possible. The scrappy startup that barely survived the pandemic has become a real company with real customers and real impact. And that feels pretty amazing.